Joining us now is Michelle Krebs. She is the Director of Automotive Relations for AutoTrader, joining us on the MegaCast. Michelle, thank you for being with us today.
Happy to be here.
Appreciate having you on. So interesting news that in 2021, and this was just reported not too long ago, this big news that in 2021, Toyota sold more vehicles in the U.S. Than any other manufacturer. It's the first time since 1931 that that title hasn't gone to General Motors. What were some of the reasons why in 2021, from your perspective and from your expertise, that Toyota was able to overtake GM in that regard?
Really one simple answer: the chip shortage. The chip shortage started last spring. Ford was the first to get hit, but then GM did. And Toyota had learned a lot of lessons from the tsunami back in 2010, and they had stockpiled chips. And so they were able to crank along until fall, and then of course their production got hit too. They ran out of chips. So it's really that was the main thing. It may not happen again. Toyota says it can't happen again, but it's historic, notable, but I don't think it's necessarily a long-term trend. And
so on the front of the chip shortage, you mentioned that Toyota, because of the lessons it learned from the tsunami in Japan years ago, had stockpiled those chips pre-pandemic and was able to have a little bit of leeway to continue on with their regular production as the pandemic continued on, unlike some of our manufacturers, particularly GM, that was the previous leader of sales here in the U.S., was able to do. Is there any sort of timeline at this moment in time in the automotive industry, in the technological industries that are adjacent and in partnership with these automotive leaders here in the U.S. as to when we may see this chip shortage begin to come to an end or a resolution where these manufacturers are able to get back out to more regular production of these vehicles?
Well, on the plus side, we do think the worst is over. We saw the worst hit like September and October. That was the lowest point of production. So we do think we're on the upswing, but I'll throw out some interesting numbers here. I watch inventory numbers, those vehicles that are available to sell across the country. We just hit 1 million this last month. That was the first time we did that since early August. Still, that sounds like a lot. But we are at least 1.5 million behind where we were in 2020 and 2.5 million behind where we were in 2019. So production is improving, chip flow is improving, but we've got this huge pipeline to fill. And there's very high demand for vehicles, and especially because we've got all that pent-up demand that people couldn't find cars last year. They extended their leases. They just put off that purchase. And so we expect very robust demand this year, but still short supplies. And that, of course, means high prices.
Yeah, and that brings me up to this next a bit of information where it used to be that you normally wouldn't see. You normally wouldn't be in, really ever, if you went into a dealership, be in a situation where you'd be looking at a vehicle and you would be paying, and you would never not pay less than the MSRP, or the manufacturer suggested retail price, for those that aren't familiar. But now it seems like these dealerships are, and part of that is, as you said, there's a supply issue. There's still that demand is there, but the supply is lower. It's basic economics. They're going to jack the prices up a little bit. But we're seeing now that a lot of these dealerships are putting these prices way above the MSRP. Are people still receptive to that, or are these dealerships, because of that, in some cases, at least the ones that maybe aren't having a regular amount of success in normal times, are they struggling because of that need to get these vehicles sold, and because of the supply issues, are they seeing a struggle, generally speaking, to convince buyers to take vehicles?
People are buying. People are paying at least list and generally above list price, which is something I've never seen in my career. So no, they aren't struggling to. I think there's different philosophies of dealers. I've talked to dealers that are like, we'll charge list, but not more than that, because we're in this for the long term. We want to keep our customers loyal. But there are other dealers that are taking the opportunity to make a little more money, and dealer profits are very strong right now because of the profit margins and the fast turn of vehicles. Most of vehicles that come into the many dealerships are already spoken for. People put down deposits. People are actually ordering cars, which isn't something we do in the US. That's a very European thing to do. We are very impulsive. We want to buy that day, take it home. But that's not the way it's working right now. You have to order ahead.
And so we're joined by Michelle Krebs, the Director of Automotive Relations for AutoTrader, joining us on the MegaCast. And so with that being said, there's a lower supply of vehicles that are available on the lots at these dealerships. They're selling them for higher prices. That's not preventing those vehicles from being sold. But then you still have that other side of the coin where you're driving by a lot of these lots and they have, in some cases, literally no vehicles there. So despite being able to sell these vehicles and get the vehicles that are there off their lots, and albeit at higher prices, how are the dealerships then surviving if they're not able to bring more of those vehicles in, or if they have a limited number of them that they're able to sell and still have the same number of employees, of salesmen, and so on?
Well, we have seen dealership personnel be lower than it was. That happened during the lockdowns of COVID, and that we are not back to full employment of dealership personnel. But one of the reasons you're not seeing vehicles in the showrooms, vehicles on the lot, is because they are spoken for. Customers have already bought them, and so they just don't have anything to keep on the lot. And also remember, people are keeping their vehicles longer, so there's the whole service department business that is booming because people are trying to keep their cars going until there are vehicles available to buy.
And so with the shortage of newer vehicles being on the lot, we know how dealerships now are reacting to that and are continuing to sell new vehicles despite that shortage. But is that, as they're trying to continue to have vehicles on the lot for sale, has that increased the demand for these dealerships to then reach out to recent lessees or those that have bought cars more recently to say, hey, we want to buy your used cars, or we'll give you a significant discount on this new car that you may have to wait a few months for if in return you'll also sell us your used vehicle?
Oh, there are lots of offers out there for buying used vehicles, because used vehicles are in short supply as well. Not as much as new vehicles, but there is a big shortage, and used car prices are very high. The average list price every week I see it go up. It's $27,000, $28,000, even $29,000 in some places. So there is a shortage of used cars, which has always been an affordable alternative for people. We see the crunch of used cars continuing for the next couple of years, because when you don't sell a lot of new cars, you're not generating a lot of used cars for the future. When people don't turn their vehicles back in on lease, you don't have those used vehicles to sell. So yes, we do see I get notices from my dealer all the time. Wouldn't you like to sell your car? And no, because then I'd have to buy another one at a higher price. And the other thing is that, the rental car companies sold off all their vehicles when COVID hit and nobody was traveling. Well, now everybody's traveling again. They want to rent a car, and they're trying to replenish their supply by going to the dealers and buying new cars, buying used cars, whereas they used to be a source of used cars.
We're joined by Michelle Krebs, the Director of Automotive Relations at AutoTrader, with us on the MegaCast. And so in that scenario, where you have particularly that relation between lessees and the dealerships that they're leasing from. If someone is near the end of their lease, they maybe have a year left, maybe 2 years left, maybe they even just recently leased that vehicle and it's next year, it's next model, does that then put the lessee in sort of, so to speak, the driver's seat in any sort of negotiation of, hey, we want to buy your lease out from you, or we want to buy the vehicle that you just bought back as a used vehicle to be able to resell? Does that put them in an advantageous spot? Or are we seeing then, like you said, well, the dealership's reaching out to me, they want to buy my car, but that's not exactly the scenario. I'm going to end up buying another car because I'm going to have to replace this one, and it's going to be at a higher price. Who's really at this current time in the position of power in that relationship?
Well, the lessee, the person who has the lease. What we have seen a lot of is people's lease is coming to an end. the way a lease works is that price, the value of that vehicle was set 3 years ago. So one of the things we are seeing is people either are buying out that lease because it's a great deal compared to they bought that same vehicle out on the free market, it would be way more. And sometimes they're selling that. So they're selling it at the going rate. Of course, that is if they can do without a car. I had a coworker who did that. He could live with just one car for a while, and he pocketed the difference. So we are seeing that. We also are seeing the automakers and dealers are allowing their customers to extend their leases. So until there is more supply of new vehicles for them to choose from, because they want to keep them in the fold.
We're joined by Michelle Krebs. She is the Director of Automotive Relations with AutoTrader, joining us on the MegaCast. And some of the most sought-after new vehicles these days, especially with the increase of fuel prices as the pandemic continues on, are electric vehicles. What are some of the big electric vehicles that are going to be debuting this year in the industry, or may take the industry by storm in 2022?
Well, Tesla has owned the electric vehicle market. They still are the biggest seller. They had record global deliveries. They survived the chip shortage very well. Some big introductions this year: the Ford Lightning, the electric pickup truck based on the F-150, is the biggest one this year, I think. And then, of course, this week at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, General Motors unveiled the Chevrolet Silverado, an electric pickup truck that comes in 2023. And then we've got, Rivian introduced a pickup truck in September, and they'll have a sport utility vehicle coming. Lucid is a new EV startup that's got product coming this year, and everybody's got something coming in the next few years. There are something like 100 EVs being introduced in the next through 2025.
Yeah, it's certainly looking like that is, if not in the next few years, certainly in the next decade or a couple of decades, that electric vehicles are going to be the industry standard. They're going to be more of the societal standard of what newer vehicles are available. And with that being the case, a lot of people get a look into the future a few years down the road if they're interested in a vehicle, years down the road if they're just interested in the future of the industry, or they're just car enthusiasts because we're here in Metro Detroit. We're in the Motor City, or near the Motor City here in Metro Detroit. And for that information, they typically will go to the North American International Auto Show. Now, pre-pandemic, it was announced that was going to be moving from its typical time in January to being an event in the summer. The pandemic, of course, has put that all in flux. At this moment in time, given where we're at in the COVID-19 pandemic, what are the current plans for the 2022 North American International Auto Show, which is now still several months out? It's not happening this month like it normally would in the past, but we still don't know what's going to go on several months.
Well, it's scheduled for September now, so we'll see. I'm sure more plans will be unveiled in the coming months, and hopefully we're past most of this pandemic stuff. But they had a mini auto show out at Motorbella back in September, I think it was, or the fall. But we'll see the full. The plan is for the full North American International Auto Show to be in September this year.
We're joined by Michelle Krebs, the Director of Automotive Relations at AutoTrader, with us on the MegaCast. Michelle, just a few more minutes with you before we need to say goodbye today. I just want to give you a chance now to, is there anything else in the automotive industry when it comes to buying a car, selling a car, or anything else in the industry in general that people should be keeping an eye out on right now in the near future?
Well, I think our 2022 forecast is that things will get better, that the chip shortage will become less severe, that we'll see our factories running at full speed again, that there's a lot of new and interesting products, including electric vehicles, including hybrids, all kinds of stuff. And so it should be a lot better year for the auto industry. It'll still be a challenge for car buyers because they're still going to have to search for the vehicle they want, and they'll probably pay a pretty high price.
Well, Michelle, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on the MegaCast today.
Thank you.